Good afternoon and welcome to the Uncovery app guest speaker series. It is January 24th and today is a very special day for me. I'm celebrating 5 years alcohol free, and it's a particularly big milestone because I couldn't get past 2 days, let alone 5 years. And so you know that we often celebrate other people's successes in the Uncovery app. And as I was planning January, I thought, well, maybe I should talk about mine. So here we are, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have Caitlin Morrison, my pal, join me today. She's a fellow woman in recovery and a beautiful, beautiful soul. And I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to connect for the first time last year. And so here we are. We're here to talk about all things. All things. So, Caitlin, welcome to the Uncovery app, and I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And of course you celebrate. Come on. 5 years, that's huge. Are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
it is.
It's
And
huge.
like for both of us, I never in a million years thought I would ever, I remember way back when I was sober curious, I met a woman who was a year sober, and I thought I said that I'll never get there. I'll never be that.
Mhm.
And then just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
made
I remember a time when anybody who said they had more than a few months sober, I was like, well, you're lying. You're lying, is what you're doing. All right. So I want to find out from you. I want to hear all about what it feels like right now. But first,
Yeah.
tell me about 5 years ago. What was the world 5 years ago to you?
Oh my God. And I tell this story because it's it's important to me because it's so non-eventful but monumental, you know. And it was 5 years ago today that I woke up after a fairly normal blitz drinking on a Thursday night. Um, I had gone to see the Phantom of the Opera because I had a few friends that were in the show. And I wanted to go with this particular friend of mine, but at that state, I bought the tickets in December, and my drinking was really spiraling for probably the last 4 to 6 months before I actually stopped. Like it was just out of control. So, anyways, typical LSB fashion at that time is I bought the tickets without consulting with my friend to say, "Hey, are you available?" I just went and I bought the tickets, and then when my friend said they just weren't available that day, I got pissed off. And then I asked another mom friend to go with me. And before we went to dinner, I was 2 bottles of wine in. And then we went to dinner and drank more and went to the show and drank more. I have absolutely no idea how my friends did in the show because I don't remember the show. I don't remember talking to people afterwards. Don't remember how I got home, all the things, right? And so when I got up 5 years ago today, the 3 a.m. shame game was solidly intact, and it was 6 o'clock. And I went down to my kitchen wearing my gray robe that I wore today for on purpose. And I went down to my kitchen and I stood there with a terrible hangover, hating myself again. And I called out all the things in my kitchen that I hated. That I hate that teapot. I hate that teacup. I hate that tea towel. And and then I paused because I had just woken up and the only verb I could come up with was hate. And I was like, I'm not a hateful person. It shocked me. And then I paused and then I realized that I had put all of these things there that I hated. I put them there. And I paused. And then I realized that if I could put all of these things I hated, I had the power to unput them. And I knew what I needed to do, and I never drank again.
That's amazing. First of all, having only known you for a year,
Mhm.
I cannot picture you getting irrationally angry about anything
I
or
can't
calling
imagine
it
me getting what?
irrationally angry about
Oh,
anything. Maybe you do. I don't know.
not off,
But
not anymore.
I cannot picture it at all.
Yeah.
Um, what what do you think that was? That insight, that moment of like
Well,
clarity. Was that just too much? Was it the universe?
it's funny because you know this because you're in long-term recovery as well, but like when we reflect back on our experiences, and oftentimes it's not even I'm going to sit down now and think about my day one. It's not that. It's like when you're out and about, when you're having a walk and you're whatever, and you think back to those moments. So there have obviously been a couple of times, and I've certainly been asked about this moment a lot, and I've reflected about it. But I would say my first um, sort of intelligent response about that moment was that it was the moment I rendered shame powerless
Mm.
because I knew, I don't know what I knew, but there was a surrender of some kind. There was a surrender of some kind, but it wasn't like I'm surrendering myself to God because that wasn't who I am and that wasn't the language that I identified with. But there really was a surrender. And in the work that I now do, um, I've come to learn that joy is one of the eight primary emotions, and one of the derivatives of joy is relief. And I absolutely remember feeling relieved because I knew the 3 a.m. shame game was over. I knew the daily hating myself was over. And I knew that that time in my life was over. And that was, to this day, the greatest relief I have ever had. And knowing what I know now, I recognize that that was my first time I had experienced joy. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't put those two things together, but upon reflection over time, I realized that that was the first sign that I was going to experience joy again.
Amazing. So you found that moment, you found that joy, you had a eureka moment,
Yeah.
and things kept getting better. When did you decide that you weren't going to hoard that joy, that you wanted to spread it around? When did you
Well,
decide to do what you did?
yeah. So I just want to offer that it was brutal for me for the first 6 months.
Mhm.
So I just want to be really clear about that. It wasn't easy. And I think and I talk about this very openly now, but I didn't know because nobody talked about it. Is that when we choose to stop drinking, we have to talk to our GPs. We have to talk to our GPs. And the reason why we have to talk to our GPs is when we've had a problematic relationship with alcohol or had any kind of dependency or addiction. And of course, now we recognize that dependency and addiction are different things, but it doesn't matter if you're dependent or if you're addicted to alcohol. We have absolutely no idea how our bodies are going to respond to not having alcohol in them after having alcohol for a continued amount of time. And the reason why we talk to our GPs is because they have a medical history of us. They know what we are susceptible to, what we're not susceptible to. For example, if there's any kind of history of an anxiety or depression before, that may present itself in the first 6 months, and just to be aware of that. And there's all kinds of things that doctors can help us with to ease through that, to help us stay on track. And so I didn't know that. And I also didn't know that going through alcohol withdrawal can be fatal. I didn't know that, but it's true. And I went cold turkey and I thought I was going to die. And so the first month was really, really awful because of the withdrawal symptoms. But after that, the first 3 months were then a matter of, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. And then when I got to about 6 months, and I've talked about this before too, it felt like there was like one beautiful snowflake that came down, one beautiful, and I thought, oh, isn't that lovely? And then the very next day, it was a snowfall. And then the very next day, it was an avalanche. And the very next day, I was living up in the North Pole, and it was this. And now we know there's so much research about the brain and the body and the healing that happens at 6 months. And so many people in this community as well have had this experience that when we get to 6 months, it's just things align and it's just a little bit easier. So I just wanted to offer that just to put into perspective that I too did not have an easy go of this at the beginning. I think it's important to talk about that. But your question was about when did I come up with She Walks, I think, or think of
It
it.
was. I'm also going to reiterate what you said before because people definitely need to hear it.
Okay.
It is so important to talk to your doctor. the reason that I say it again is I read a study the other day from a couple of different organizations, CCSA and CAPSA, that says that I can't remember the exact number, something like 78% of people have never talked to their family doctor about their substance use or their drinking.
Mhm.
That's like, that's almost everyone. That's most people. So this is definitely a place for a GP, and it's really good advice, and more people need to follow it. So I'm glad you gave it. I just wanted to shout it out again. But
Okay.
yes, the
Okay.
question was, when did this become a thing that you wanted to pass on?
Okay. And so before we answer that, I'm also going to piggyback on this. Here's the script. This is what you say to your doctor. You say, Doc, listen, and like you don't want, I can appreciate a woman's not going to want to show up and say, I'm a total blackout drunk alcoholic and I'm losing my mind because we're concerned about the retribution of that. So this is what you can say to your doctor. Doctor, I know that I'm now drinking more than I'd like to. I know that this is negatively impacting my health. I know now that no amount of alcohol is safe. It's all over the place. And then with the US Surgeon General saying they want to put cancer labels on alcohol. So we can say that I know that my drinking isn't serving me. I want to do something about it. I know it's not healthy. I know that I need to talk to my GP, so I'm here. That's it. And your doctor will get the point. And PS, this will be the fifth conversation probably that day or that week that your doctor will have heard because now people are beginning to talk because there's a permission in no amount of alcohol is safe. There's a permission in cancer labels being encouraged in the United States. So it's permission. So again, thank you for letting me say that. But the questions are, how do we talk to our doctor and why do we need to talk to our doctor? So to answer your question about She Walks, this is great. So this week, my piece of magic, Lucy, my daughter, she was pulling out all of my journals from my bedroom and she's like, oh, let's just read through stuff. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to find in this journal collection. But what I found is it this one? Oh, that's 2020. I found my journal of the days leading up to when I stopped drinking and what I was saying. It's pretty interesting. But it's in this one where I wrote what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And I was just coming up on 365 days sober. And talk about my experience, have Zoom calls with other women that are going through the experience, have a video blog about my experience, and write a program for 365 days, how to get through the first year. And that was in 2021. And at that time, She Walks Canada wasn't a thing. The Uncovery app wasn't a thing. But just this January, of course, I launched the 365 program, which is a program for gray area drinkers to get through a full year of firsts. And I'm really, really proud of that. And of course, She Walks Canada has become what it's become. So it was in 2021, around March. So I would have been 12, 13, 14 months sober. I was out for a walk and I said, I can't be the only one. I can't be the only one. And so I wanted to create an environment where women could walk together, but it's more metaphoric, right? Walk together, walk around, walk through, um, walk away from, walk toward. I wanted to create something where we could not have to walk alone.
That's beautiful. And also really, well thought out and hit a lot of things on the head that I think people who for years have been trying to figure out what, better, fair programs should look like, things like that, what the powerful things in recovery are. Did that come from experience? Did that come from a background in the recovery world and in the charitable world?
No, because as you know, I mean, my career before this was an opera singer, so I wasn't at all in that immersed in that experience. But I remember feeling so very alone when I was going through my path because I had tried more conventional pathways and I didn't get it. I didn't jive. I didn't feel like I fit in. And so I wanted to find, and I didn't know it at the time, but for me, language was really important, and how I talked about my experience was really important. But at the beginning, I had no language. I had no language to describe how I was feeling in a way that was meaningful to me and really felt true to me. And I remember I was in my basement. We were in a row house, and I was taking out the recycling, and I was 10 days alcohol free. And I was so, even though I was feeling like shit, I was so grateful to be taking out the recycling because it didn't clank. It wasn't full of bottles, right? So I was taking out the recycling. I felt like shit. And Craig was in the garage, and he said, "What's wrong with you?" And he wasn't trying to be an asshole. He was just saying, like, there's something going on here. But I had tried to get sober so many times that I wasn't going to come out and say it because I didn't want to have to explain another failed attempt. And this was the conversation. What's wrong with you? I'm an alcoholic and I'm in rehab. You're not an alcoholic. You're not an expert on my experience. How can I help? Don't bring red wine into the house. That was the conversation. And what I encourage women to do now is to remember these conversations once we stop drinking, because they are absolute metaphors for how we move forward with the rest of our lives. For me, in that conversation with Craig, I didn't talk about myself as an alcoholic. That was the only language I had. I was not in rehab, but I knew that I needed to be rehabilitated in some way. I knew that. And he said, "You're not an alcoholic." Him trying to make me feel better, or holy shit, she's putting up a mirror to my drinking because I'm her drinking buddy, whatever that was. And then I fired back with, "You're not an expert on my experience." And that was one of the most definitive moments of my life, because it was the first time that I ever stood up to a man. And then he came right back, he put his arms out, he said, "How can I help?" And he did a very good job of that one. But then I said, "Don't bring red wine to the house," and he never did. But that was the first time that I advocated for myself. So self advocacy became very, very important. Language and finding right words to advocate for myself was very, very important. And saying what I needed was really important. And all of those things happened for the first time in my life in a 6-line interaction. And that just set the stage for everything after.
Did that feel big at the time? Like, did
Yeah.
that feel like an important interaction at the time?
Yeah. And I asked Craig about that not too long ago. And I said, "What was your take on that?" And he said, "Whoa," that was his take. Whoa, because I had never come back. I didn't yell at him. It was just my tone was clear and strong. And I'd never come back at him before, and he knew I was serious. And and his response was, "Okay, no problem." But yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about how you feel in terms of what's different for women. What is the thing that you learned in all of this about the experience that women have both when they're drinking and then when they're thinking about not drinking and when they're on that road to recovery or in recovery.
So what's different for women? What
Mhm.
was that second part? I wasn't clear about that.
It's sort of all the different pieces. So all the way from what's the different experience in drinking for women that
Mm.
you've
Yeah,
seen, and then in thinking about not drinking, and then
right.
in the process of getting to that place that, I mean, look at you 5 years in, that
Yeah.
kind of place.
So, uh, first of all, the number one emotion that women experience with problematic drinking is shame. And I think a lot of people who are dealing with substance use issues experience shame. There's no doubt about it. But shame as it comes with women in our experience, is a little bit different because of where it's coming from. It's usually associated with a perfectionism, and it's associated with people pleasing. And it's associated with being everything to everyone all the time at all costs. And there's very little um, sense of self-care for women. And to make matters worse, we often when we're drinking, consider wine to be the self-care, because the wine is what takes us down at the end of it. The wine is the reward, the wine is the treat, right? And so it ends up getting so ass backwards that the very thing that we're trying to escape from is the very thing we are tethered to. Um, and and so I think when we stop drinking, we are trying to undo the conditions that we have been bred into. And we have to understand who we are outside of external influence and external validation and replace that with what we want for ourselves. And so not only that is that extremely difficult because we've spent our entire lives marking our behaviors by the response of others, just making sure everybody's cared for, making sure everybody's happy as mothers, as wives, as people in the workplace. We have to overcompensate, all the things. And so we have to undo the conditioning that in a way has kept us safe. And so it's a very vulnerable experience to transition from external validation to internal validation and being able to rely on that. But what we know for those of us who overcome over drinking is that our sense of intuition and our sense of our own worth slingshots into an entirely new place once we have the capacity and the clarity to think for ourselves, which usually starts to happen after the 6-month period. And so for women, there is a reward, alcohol is our reward to recognizing that alcohol was our relief. To, from what do we need the relief? Okay. And then it's from there that we begin to do the work of undoing, for many of us, the 8 layers of conditions that I talk about in the first month of the 365. Does that answer your question?
It does, but it also leads me to another one.
Mm,
So sorry.
bring it.
Um, so pretend that I'm new to this. I'm day one. I'm somewhere between day one and 6 months, and I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And I say, you talk about finding, um, you know, finding self-satisfaction from within instead of external things. That's crazy. What do I do? How do I do that? That sounds impossible.
Yeah. Yes. And
What's the first thing you tell me to do?
first of all, acknowledge the fact that you're there and you're like, that's impossible. The fact that you're saying that's impossible, you're already a step ahead because before you would never have even said that. You wouldn't have ever considered it. But now you've already placed yourself in the position to be open to something bigger. First off, my favorite thing to do is what I call the oral method, and it's observe, record, and label. And it's when we align what we think and feel with what we say and do. This is one of the most important things to do. Um, when we are in the middle of people pleasing, perfectionism, any of this shit that serves everybody else but not ourselves, um, we need to first of all just become aware of what's going on. When we are in the first 6 months of overcoming over drinking and that voice comes in and says, I need to have a drink, I just want to offer that this is not the time to journal your feelings, think about your why, connect with your yoga class. It's the time to shut that shit down. So when that voice comes in and says, I need a drink, you need to fire back with, I need relief. No, I don't. I need relief. You can figure out from what later. But I just want to make the note, first of all, when you're in the first 6 months and that voice is coming at you, this is not the time to do the oral method, journal, find your pen, and all that bullshit. It's time to shut that voice down with, I need a drink. No, I don't. I need relief. So once we're able to just step away from that, we can do the oral method. And so what you want to do is whenever you have a conversation that brings up that, oh God, why didn't I say that? Or why didn't I understand how I was feeling so that I could tell my boss this? Or why do I let my sister, any of that shit? After the event has happened, do write this down. It's a T graph. And you put here, think, feel, did you say and do? You know, what did you think and what did you feel? And what did you say and what did you do? And then underneath that, and be as candid as you possibly can. Nobody's going to read this. And then at the bottom, just say, why were they not aligned? And here's the hint, it's going to be a fear of some kind. You're afraid that if you tell your husband that he has to help pick up the homework, home shit, whatever, home stuff, that he's going to get upset. And then let's just take a word from Mel Robbins. Let him. We get to the place where we can let him. And so what we want to do is over the course of 5 times where you have these situational or specific moments where, why am I not? Write down your T chart. What did I think and feel? What did I say and do? And ask yourself why you weren't able to do it. That's it. Just start there and then shut that voice down. Whenever she comes in and says, you want to have a drink? No, I don't. I need relief. Start there. And then I get people to sign up and have one-on-one conversation with me in the app. They can do that. Yeah. That's where we start. And get into a meeting. Get into a recovery meeting.
You know, I will tell you that in my opinion, whether you think you might be over drinking, you're sober curious, the drinking even factors into it at all. I think every woman on this planet, even if they've never touched the stuff, should do that think feel experiment. The
Yeah. Oral method.
oral method.
Observe, record, and label. Because it's about eventually, it's about saying it. That's why I call it the oral method. Eventually, it's about.
Yeah, yeah. Women's mental health is talked about so often, and I think you're maybe one of the only people who talks about that disconnect between what we experience and what we express, and the shame associated, and the expectations around associated with it. And that's repressing things all the time. That's just us deciding we have to perform, and because we have to perform, we can't be ourselves. And then all of those things we wish we wish we did with the thoughts and the feelings, it just gets trapped in there.
Yeah.
My goodness. So everybody do that. No matter why you're listening to this, every single person do that, please.
Yes.
Gosh, oh my gosh, I have so many. I thought about 1,000 things I want to talk to you about. I'm also, we talked at one point separately about how how marketing, how the external world, um, how it normalizes drinking for women, how it makes drinking seem, fun and just part of being a gal. And do you feel like talking about that a little bit?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No, I can talk about anything. And I'll talk about anything with you.
Yeah.
So, okay, so here's the deal. Is that I'm trying okay, of all the things that I want to do with my life, one of the things that I am considering, and I just need to I need to watch it here just because I get angry when I talk about how alcohol is marketed to women. Because and when the U.S. Surgeon General came out and said that cancer labels should be on alcohol, of course I had a response to that. Um, and what I just don't understand is that, okay, then why do they have drink responsibly at the end of every single ad? It's because they know that it's an addictive substance. They know that it causes 200 different illnesses in women. They know that, and they're passing the accountability buck to the women who are now dependent on it, who are now, and in this case, men too. It's not just women, but the targeted campaigns to women is very heavy-handed, particularly as Ann Dowsett Johnston said, I'm borrowing that from her, but it is very heavy-handed. And I I remember the conversation I had with her, and she said she doesn't believe that the labels are going to be put on alcohol. And I actually disagree with her, just because I'm hopeful, if nothing else. But the glamorization of the overconsumption of alcohol is not serving anyone. And how can they possibly do that now when we know without a shadow of a doubt that no amount of alcohol is safe? How can they? I think they should go to jail. See, this is where I'm at. Marketers who know exactly what they're doing, saying drink responsibly, and even if we just take just now, just from this moment on, forget everything else. This moment on, no amount of alcohol is safe. It causes 200 illnesses in women, it particularly cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, blah, 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 blah. And drink responsibly with heavy-handed marketing to women. They should be thrown in jail, those marketers. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
Do you think it stops women from reaching out, making some changes sooner than they do? If that makes sense.
It wouldn't have stopped me
That's fair.
because it's not about that. See,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you said that, because here's the thing, is that women, and I'm speaking about dependency because that's my audience. I'm not speaking about addiction. I appreciate they're very different things. So when I'm speaking about dependency, our gals are smart. Like, they can do an internet search. They probably watch the news. They probably know that the US Surgeon General just said cancer labels. They probably know that no amount of alcohol is safe. They probably know about the 2022 guidelines that the CCSA put out, which was earth-shattering globally, with their guidelines for what is healthy. Essentially, no amount is healthy. So our gals know that, but that is not stopping them from going to the liquor store, because what we need is relief. You're going to tell me that the only thing in my life that is giving me relief, we're going to take away because the Surgeon General wants to put cancer labels on something? There's no way they're going to take away their relief. So what we need to do is stop the ramming of the data. While it is very important, and while we do need to educate, we cannot start with that language. That language is not going to help somebody who is dependent or addicted in stopping. They might say, okay, this is a real fucking problem. And they might go into a sober curious state where they'll be for 18 months, like I was. But let's not kid ourselves that this news is going to solve the problem. It's the same efficacy as saying that non-alcoholic drinks are solving the problem.
Yeah. I haven't heard anyone say that, but I might get mad if I did. So I'm non-alcoholic drinks are solving the problem. Okay. Um, we'll switch a little bit because we if I get into that, then we'll both be angry and we'll have to write our oro charts down about how we may have overreacted. If you could go back in time,
Yeah.
little bit of it, not that you would want to particularly go back in time, but
Yeah.
let's say you could go back in time to 2 months into 2 months to March of 2020. You can go back to March of 2020. What would you, what's the one thing you would want to tell yourself? What's the one thing you would wish you knew? Or 17 things.
You know what's coming up right away? And I've never really asked myself that question about March. I would have said you figured it out. I would have said that. You figured it out. Even though I was feeling like shit because I was only a couple months sober or whatever,
Mhm.
I would have said, this is it. You figured it out. Um, just in the sense that I knew that not drinking was the answer. Not that I figured anything else out, but just that not drinking was going to be the answer. But I did feel very different this time, the seventh time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said before you were an opera singer,
Yeah.
and people know that. I say you are an opera singer because once an opera singer, always an opera singer. So you've done the thing where you've been on stage and you've done the performance and you felt the sort of the glow,
Yeah.
the glow from after the anxiety and after doing the thing and after the audience. Does this make you feel as good doing this work with other women?
I think you and I have the same experience because of
Mm.
your background as well as a Shakespearean actor.
But we're not talking about me.
Yeah, I know. Well, we should. Um, um, it's very different. And actually, I was talking with a client, somebody in the app yesterday in one of our coachings, and we were talking about the external accolades, right? And well, like it's the performance is a very out there thing. And you literally get up in front of people to do your job, and they applaud, they respond, um, and it's lights and you're in the spotlight. There's no metaphor about it. You're actually in the spotlight, and then when the performance is over, there's an ovation, and then you go off stage, and the next day there's a review in the paper, and usually they're pretty good, that kind of thing. I was lucky that the roles that I often played were the comedic roles. And so it's really hard to get a bad review for a comedic role. Like it's harder to get an amazing review for a sad heroine. It's much easier to get a great review as a comedic character, which I often was the comedic character. Um, but what people don't know about that lifestyle, as you would know very well, is that it is incredibly lonely. And um, like when you're learning your part, you're alone. You don't have people with you, and it takes months, years to really hone the five roles that you do for your lifetime, right? It takes forever to learn that. And there's a lot of study, internal study in your studio, and then when you get together, it's beautiful. And then you have this very outward, amazing spotlight, audience, ovation, and you go home alone. And you're lucky if there's a cat there, you know? And then you get the reviews and the accolades and the thing, but you're alone. You're at home alone reading them, or right? And so this is a very different experience because there's none of that, there's none of that stuff. But there's a lot of this connection, and there's a lot of messages that people send to each other back and forth, and there's a lot of connectivity. And it's wild because most of the women in this community I've never actually met. It's all on Zoom. um, so it's just a very different experience. But I would say in my beginning sobriety, I really had to deal with losing my career and the fact that my alcohol use played such a significant role in that. And it was really hard to deal with the shame and the guilt and the regret and the grief and loss and all that shit. That was really, really hard. But I now know, like, the story that I was meant to tell was not, Mozart singing the Talmud. It's not, that was never my story. My story is this one. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. And I'm just getting started.
Beautifully said. And now you make sure that people never walk alone
Yes. Together.
together. What's next?
Well, that's a great question. And even I'm not sure. Um, um, I know that things are changing, and I'm not ready to make those announcements yet. I know that things are changing. Um, however, I'm excited about I'm very excited about the space of women leaving alcohol behind. There's more and more people that are joining the sober curious movement more than ever. And that's certainly something that I've seen in my community is that there's just so many sober curious people that are showing up versus people that are on the path. So that's great. But I am building out what I offer. And I've been asked many times if I would like to open it up to men, and the answer is no. So, so I don't know, like, peace out. But I think I really want to stay with women. But I'm definitely going to be staying in the women's space of overcoming over drinking. However, it will be shifting for sure. Yeah, and I'm not ready to make those announcements yet.
Well, you don't have to make them yet.
Yeah,
But I think we're all very excited to find out what that's going to be like.
thank you.
I also want to make sure that we do this again in 2030.
Yes, fine. We can do it. We do it all the time.
Okay, we can do it
When's
all the
yours?
time.
When's your 5 year?
Huh?
When
In
is it?
3 weeks.
What?
You
Three
beat me
weeks.
by 3 weeks. No, that's good. Look, you're the winner. You win.
I want to win. I want to do it together.
Oh, well,
You know me.
I mean, that's close enough.
Okay, well, let's wrap this up because then we'll open it up to the gals in the community and we can talk with them for a bit before we go.
All right, good.
Okay, I'll wrap it.
Thank you for letting me ask you some questions and being just an insanely amazing person.
I love you.
Thank you for all that stuff. I love you.
Thank you for thank you for joining the Uncovery app. It has been my absolute pleasure to be here with you today with my friend Caitlin Morrison. As together we celebrate my 5 years being alcohol free, and of course Caitlin's 5 years in 3 weeks from now. We can and do overcome this thing, and we do it together. And so let's do that. Thank you for being here.